Welcome. I am the Body Whisperer, and I am glad you are here. Let us go quietly inside you to meet Pepsin Paul, one small part of you that keeps working through the night while you sleep. Inside the quietly working stomach, Pepsin Paul, the body's patient protein demolition worker, shows how stomach acid wakes his tool, and together they break down the evening meal into the building blocks the body will use overnight. But first, let us settle in together. Find a comfortable position. Let your arms grow heavy, your legs, your shoulders. Take a slow breath in and let it go. One more. In and release. Good. Now, while you rest here doing nothing at all, something quiet is happening inside you. Your body is working. It always is, every hour of every day, without ever asking for thanks. I want you to get to know it a little better, to listen to it, to feel it, to appreciate it. Because the more you understand the quiet world beneath your skin, the more at home you feel inside your own body. There is nothing you need to do now. Nowhere to be, nothing to figure out. Just breathe. Close your eyes if you have not already, and let us begin. There is a quiet piece of work going on inside you right now, and it has been going on every night of your life. You ate something this evening. Maybe it was something warm, something satisfying. And then you set the plate aside, and you moved on with your night, and you forgot about it entirely. That is what we do. We eat, and we trust the rest to something we can't see. What you trusted it to was a room, not a room in any architectural sense. But if you could shrink yourself down and step inside, past the ribs, past the slow drum of the heart, you would find a chamber that earns the word. It is tucked high in the abdomen, just left of center, a muscular bag no bigger than your two fists pressed together. It has walls that can squeeze and churn. It has a lining that stays slick in conditions most surfaces couldn't survive. It has a patient intelligence about it, in the way that a well-run kitchen has intelligence, everything in its place, everything ready, and no motion wasted. This is the stomach, and it has been at work since your last meal arrived. The stomach receives what the mouth sends down. Earlier, before any of this quiet hour, a worker named Amy was doing her part, breaking the starchy pieces of your meal into smaller, more manageable forms, starting the moment teeth came together. Amy works fast, and she works cheerfully, and by the time she was done, her portion of the job was already finished. What the mouth passed down was softer, partially prepared. The stomach accepted the handoff without ceremony. It always does. Now the work that belongs specifically here can begin. And to understand it, you need to know about the acid. The stomach makes an acid, A strong one. The lining of the stomach is built with tiny specialized cells whose only purpose is to produce it, releasing it steadily into the interior of the chamber. The result is an environment that is, by any ordinary measure, remarkably acidic. Not hostile, purposeful. There is a difference. Here is the thing about that acid. Most people, when they hear about it, imagine it as the stomach's unfortunate side effect, something the body tolerates in order to get the real work done. That is not quite right. The acid is not a byproduct. The acid is a tool. Two tools, actually, doing two different jobs at once. The first job, it unfolds proteins. The food that arrived in the stomach, the meat, the egg, the lentils, whatever it was, those foods carried proteins inside them, and proteins are intricate, tightly folded structures. Think of a long piece of wire bent hundreds of times back on itself into a dense, knotted shape. The acid loosens those knots. It pulls the wire more nearly straight. This process, the unfolding of a protein, called denaturation, is not destruction. It is preparation. You cannot work on something that is wound up tight. You have to open it first. The second job the acid does is quieter, but just as important. Somewhere in the stomach right now, there is a worker waiting to wake up. His name is Pepsin Paul. Paul is a protein-cutting enzyme, meaning he is a molecule whose one job is to find proteins and cut them into shorter pieces. He is built for it. Patient, methodical, built for a single kind of work and deeply good at it. But Paul does not arrive in the stomach already awake. He arrives as something called pepsinogen, a sleeping form of himself, an inactive version that has not yet opened into its working shape. The stomach keeps him this way deliberately. An enzyme that cuts proteins, wandering around in a lining made of protein, would be a problem if it had nothing to stop it. The acid stops it, and the acid starts it. In a strong, acidic environment, pepsinogen folds and shifts and becomes pepsin, becomes Paul, awake, oriented, ready. Without the acid, Paul stays sleeping. With it, he opens his eyes. And then something remarkable happens. Paul, once awake, helps make more acid. He contributes to the very conditions that woke him. The system sustains itself. The room stays ready for work, not because something is forcing it to, but because the work itself keeps the conditions alive. Paul knows this, in whatever way an enzyme knows anything, which is to say, his shape knows it. His structure is the knowledge. He does not have to decide to help. He simply does, because that is what he is. So here is the true thing at the center of all this quiet night's work. The stomach's acid and Paul's waking are not two separate events. They are one event, looping back on itself. The acid wakes Paul. Paul helps sustain the acid. And together, in that strong, purposeful environment, the proteins from your evening meal are being unfolded and cut and passed along, slowly, thoroughly, without any help from you at all. You are already asleep, or nearly. And the work goes on. The stomach is unhurried. It has seen every meal you have ever eaten. It has handled the quick meals and the long ones, the light and the heavy. Tonight it takes what was given, and it does with that what it has always done, steadily, without complaint. In the dark beneath your ribs, where you will never see it. Let your shoulders drop a little. The work is being handled. Your arms are heavy. Your legs are heavy. That heaviness is the good kind, the kind that means the day is finally over. The stomach is a quiet room right now. Not silent exactly, there is movement, a slow muscular turning, the way a hand might work dough without thinking about it. But quiet in the way that purposeful things are quiet. No announcement, no fanfare, just the work beginning. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. Pepsin Paul does not arrive at the meal already sharp. He arrives sleeping. The body keeps him in a gentler, locked-down form, the way you might keep a good knife in a sheath. Not because the knife is dangerous, because a knife in a sheath is ready, and readiness is not the same as recklessness. This sleeping form has a name. It is called pepsinogen, meaning the thing that will become pepsin once the right conditions are met. Paul in his pepsinogen state is patient. He has been patient since he was made. He has been waiting for the room to change. And the room does change. The stomach's inner walls hold very small structures, cells that do one thing and do it quietly, without ceremony. They release acid into the stomach's hollow space. That acid does not arrive all at once. It builds gradually, the way a room warms when the heat comes on. Slowly, the environment shifts. The walls know. The contents know. And Paul knows. What happens next is almost elegant in its simplicity. The acid does not wake Paul from the outside, the way you might shake someone's shoulder. It changes the shape of him. The molecule that was pepsinogen, the sleeping form, folds differently in the presence of acid. It loses a small piece of itself, a kind of latch that was holding it closed. And when that latch is gone, the active site opens. Paul is awake. Paul is pepsin. This is the moment. Not the arrival of the food, not the release of the acid. The moment is this conversion, sleeping form to working form, because until it happens, nothing can be cut. The meal can sit in the strongest acid imaginable, and if Paul never wakes, the proteins stay whole. Acid and Paul are not two separate steps. They are the same step, expressed twice. Paul knows this. He has always known it. Every version of him that has ever worked in this stomach learned it the same way, by waking into it, by feeling the room shift and feeling himself shift with it. There is no lesson. There is only the change and then the work, now. The proteins in the meal, whatever they were, meat or egg, or a handful of something that grew in the ground, they arrived here folded. That is how proteins travel. They fold themselves into compact, knotted shapes, the way a letter is folded into an envelope. The shape is not random. It was made carefully by the original source, to do a specific thing in the original source. A protein in a piece of meat was folded to serve that animal's body. It is not, in that form, particularly useful to this one, so it needs to be unfolded first. The acid handles this. The sharp, acidic environment of the stomach loosens the bonds that hold those tight folds together. A protein that arrived as a dense, compact knot begins to open. It stretches out. It becomes accessible. This unfolding, biologists call it denaturation, meaning the protein loses its original shape, is not damage. It is preparation. The body is not destroying the protein. It is making the protein available. Think of it like this. You cannot eat an orange without opening it. You can hold it, admire it, carry it around. But the part you want is inside a structure that needs to be broken before it gives anything up. The acid breaks the structure. Paul works on what is inside. And once those proteins are unfolded, Paul moves along them. He finds the long chains, the sequences of smaller units called amino acids strung together end to end, and he cuts them. Not randomly. Paul is a very specific cutter. He looks for particular places along the chain, specific junctions, and those are the places he severs. The result is not a pile of dust. It is a collection of shorter chains, medium pieces where there were long ones, a beginning, not an ending. The stomach does not finish the job entirely. That is not its role here. The stomach begins the disassembly, creates pieces small enough to move onward, and then passes them along. Deeper into the digestive tract, other workers will carry the process further, down to the individual amino acids the body truly needs. But none of that later work would be possible without this first work. You cannot skip Paul. You cannot skip the acid. The system is sequential, and this is the sequence's honest beginning. Let the breath come and go on its own. There is nothing to do. The jaw is soft. The hands are still. Somewhere below the weight of the ribs, in the warm dark of the abdomen, the process is moving through its paces without any help from the thinking mind. It has been doing this since long before anyone had a word for it. The acid did not create something new. It revealed what was already there, waiting to open. Your body has done this every single night of your life. It knows the way without being told. Let it lead. So Paul is awake now. His active site is open. The proteins from the meal are unfolded, their long chains loose and accessible. And Paul does what Paul does. He cuts, not randomly. Not the way you might tear bread apart with your hands, pulling wherever seems easiest. Paul cuts at specific places along the protein chain, particular bonds between particular building blocks. He finds those bonds the way a key finds a lock. The shape of his active site matches the shape of the bond he is looking for. When he finds one, he settles in, and then the bond gives way. This is called specificity. The plain meaning is simpler than the word. Paul does not cut everything. He cuts the right things. in the right places, with a kind of patience that has no analogy in a hurry. And here is the part worth sitting with for a moment. A single protein from your dinner, say, a strand from a piece of chicken, or from a lentil, or from the white of an egg, is not a short thing. It is a long, intricate chain of smaller units called amino acids, meaning the individual building blocks that proteins are made of. Some of those chains run to hundreds of units long. Some run longer still. They are not merely long. They are folded, looped, and twisted back on themselves in shapes that took the original cell considerable effort to produce. When the acid loosened those folds, it did not make the chains short. It just made them reachable. Paul still has a great deal of cutting to do. So he does not try to cut the whole chain at once. He works along it, snipping at one bond, then moving, then finding the next. He produces what you might call fragments, shorter chains, still made of amino acids, still connected to each other, but smaller than what he started with. These fragments are called peptides, meaning chains of amino acids that are shorter than a full protein, but longer than a single unit. Think of it like this. If the original protein is a very long sentence, hundreds of words, punctuated in complicated ways, Paul is not reading the sentence. He is cutting it into phrases. The phrases still have meaning. They are just smaller than what they were. The work of turning those phrases into individual words will happen later, further down, in quieter corridors of the gut. But that later work depends entirely on Paul having done this part first. Turns out, the stomach is not the place where digestion finishes. It is the place where digestion becomes possible. Paul knows this. He has always known it. His whole design is oriented around that one truth, not completion, but preparation. He is not the last step. He is the step that makes all the later steps workable. There is a kind of modesty in that, if enzymes can be said to have modesty. He does not need to be the one who finishes. He only needs to be the one who begins it properly. And the acid that surrounds him keeps helping the whole time. This is the part that surprises people when they first hear it. The acid does not just wake Paul up and then step back. It stays. The stomach keeps its environment strongly acidic throughout the whole period of digestion. And that matters for two reasons that are worth knowing. First, the acid continues to denature, to unfold any proteins that have not fully loosened yet. A large meal does not arrive neatly pre-processed. There are dense parts, tightly folded parts, parts still packed together from the way the food was structured. The acid keeps working on those steadily, while Paul cuts elsewhere. Second, the acidic environment protects the work itself. Most of the bacteria that arrive with food, and food does carry bacteria, simply from existing in the world, cannot survive the stomach's acidity. The strongly acidic room is, among other things, a filtering stage. Not a dramatic one, not a loud one, just a room where most things that should not proceed further do not. Paul does not think about this. It is simply the nature of his workplace. The conditions that allow him to work are the same conditions that keep the work safe. One environment doing two things at once, and neither of them is an accident. The stomach wall, meanwhile, protects itself with a layer of thick, slippery mucus, the coating that lines the inside surface. This layer sits between the acid and the tissue that produces it. Without that layer, the acid would have nowhere safe to do its work. With it, the room can stay as strongly acidic as it needs to be, and the walls that maintain it remain unharmed. Every part of this arrangement was in place long before the meal arrived. The mucus was already there. The acid was already building. Paul was already waiting in his inactive form, patient as a tool left on a shelf overnight. The meal did not cause the system. It simply set it in motion. Somewhere in the middle of all this, in the slow churn of the stomach, in the steady acidic warmth, in the small deliberate cuts Paul makes along one peptide chain, and then another, the evening meal begins to stop being food and starts being material. Not yet amino acids, not yet building blocks, but no longer a piece of chicken or a handful of lentils or the white of an egg. Something in between. It did not become something else all at once. It became something else one cut at a time. Let your shoulders drop a little further. Let the back of your neck soften. The pillow is doing the work now, not you. One cut at a time. That is how transformation happens in here. Not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of small, precise ones. And here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The stomach does not simply pour acid at random and hope for the best. It listens first. Before the meal even arrives, something is already happening. The brain sends an early signal. The smell of food, the thought of food, even the act of chewing up above, all of it travels down a long nerve, the body's wandering signal line, and taps the stomach on the shoulder. The stomach begins to stir. A few of the cells along its walls start preparing, not full production yet. Just a readiness, a quiet getting ready. This is a useful thing to understand. The stomach is not a passive container. It is a responsive one. The cells that make the acid, nestled deep in the stomach's inner lining, are waiting for exactly this kind of signal. They receive it and they begin. What they produce moves into the space at the center of the stomach, the hollow room where the meal will land. By the time the food arrives, the room is already becoming what it needs to be. And then the meal does arrive, and here the stomach does something rather elegant. It reads the contents. Protein in particular tells the stomach to keep going. The presence of protein, meat, egg, a handful of beans, is a signal in itself. Certain cells in the stomach lining sense the protein and release a small messenger, a chemical courier that travels through the tissue and tells the acid-making cells to continue their work, to sustain it, to not let up. The name of that courier is gastrin. It is a hormone, meaning a chemical message that travels through the body's own fluid to reach its target, like a note slipped from one room to another. Gastrin says, in effect, there is still protein here. Keep the conditions right. Paul still has work to do. Paul knows this. He does not need to understand the chemistry of it. He simply works in the environment it creates. The acid stays strong because the protein is there. The protein is accessible because the acid stays strong. It is a loop, and it is a steady one. This is what makes the stomach so well suited to the job. It does not produce a fixed amount of acid for every meal regardless of what that meal contains. It adjusts. A meal heavy in protein calls for more sustained effort. A lighter meal asks for less. The stomach calibrates, sets its level to match the work, which is the kind of quiet intelligence the body runs on constantly without any instruction from the person doing the eating. Let your jaw loosen a little. Your hands can be still. There is a texture to all of this that is easy to miss. The stomach wall is not smooth and uniform. It is folded. Deep folds, like the pleats of a resting accordion, that allow the stomach to expand when a meal arrives and contract again as that meal moves on. Those folds increase the surface area, the amount of working wall, so that the cells producing acid and the cells producing pepsinogen have more room to do their work. More of them in contact with more of the meal. And tucked within those folds are the mucus-making cells, working steadily alongside everyone else. They do not produce acid. They produce the protective coat that keeps the acid where it belongs, in the central space, working on the meal and away from the wall itself. It is a careful arrangement. Two adjacent types of cell, doing opposite-seeming things in service of the same purpose. The stomach does not see this as a contradiction. It is simply the way the room is built. Think about what that means for Paul's work. He moves through an environment that is being continuously refreshed. The acid is not a one-time event that fades. It is being produced, maintained, and responded to throughout the time the meal is present. The stomach is not a room where something happened. It is a room where something is still happening. Cut by cut, the protein chains grow shorter. What arrived as a long, complex structure, many hundreds of small units linked together, folded back on itself in 3 dimensions, is becoming a collection of fragments. Some of those fragments are still fairly long. Some are shorter. Paul works across them all, finding the bonds he recognizes, pressing his active site against them, and releasing the 2 pieces that result. He does not rush this. There is no advantage to rushing it. The stomach holds the meal for as long as the work requires, and the acid stays as strong as the protein demands. The whole system is built around completing the job before handing anything onward. This is actually the reason digestion takes the time it takes. It is not a delay. It is the work itself, being done at the pace it requires. Thoroughness is not a luxury here. It is the point. Your breathing is slower now, most likely. The body is already settling into its own rhythm, easy and low. The stomach, for its part, keeps its own rhythm, acid meeting protein, Paul meeting peptide, the folds expanding and contracting as the meal softens and shifts. It is not dramatic, it never was. It did not need to be a large event. It needed to be a reliable one. You are held here, resting and warm and safe. That is the whole of it. There is no other part you have missed. Reliable. That is the word that keeps coming back to this place. Not dramatic, not forceful. Just reliable, the same conditions sustained, so the same work can happen in the same way every time food arrives. And now that the conditions are in place, here is the thing most people never think about. Paul does not eat the protein whole. He does not dissolve it. He cuts it. Specifically, carefully, at particular places along the chain. Here is how that works. A protein is a long chain of smaller units, called amino acids, strung together one after another, the way beads sit on a cord. The cord itself is made of links, and each link is a bond, a connection point holding one bead to the next. Not all bonds look alike. Some are strong, some are angled. Some are easier to reach. Paul's active site, that groove that opened when the acid removed his latch, is shaped to recognize a very particular kind of bond. One where the surrounding beads have a certain shape, a certain chemical character. He does not drift randomly down the chain and cut wherever he lands. He finds his spot, he holds, he cuts. That selectivity has a name. The bonds Paul cuts are called peptide bonds, meaning the links that join one amino acid to the next. And he is especially drawn to the ones sitting next to large, ring-shaped amino acids. Ones with a particular bulkiness to them. His active site was made for that shape, and so when he finds it, the fit is close, precise. The way a key finds a lock not by pressing hard, but by simply fitting. This matters for a quiet reason, because Paul is not trying to finish the job. He is trying to begin it. The body does not need fully finished amino acid units at this stage. It needs the long chains broken into shorter ones, made small enough to travel on. What Paul produces are called peptides, meaning short chains of amino acids, still connected, still needing further work later. He is the first cutter, not the last. And being the first cutter means he does not need to be everywhere. He needs to be reliable at the right places. Think of a long rope that needs to be carried through a narrow door. You could try to carry the whole rope at once, coiled and tangled. Or you could make a few careful cuts, not into threads, not into dust, just into manageable lengths. That is what Paul does, manageable lengths. And here is something worth sitting with for a moment. The protein that arrived, a piece of meat, the white of an egg, a handful of lentils, was folded. Tightly folded, as proteins always are, holding its working shape, compact and dense. The acid changed that. The acid loosened the folding, let the chain stretch open. And it is that open, stretched, exposed chain that Paul can work on. A folded protein is hard to cut. There are bonds in the middle of the fold that are simply not reachable, tucked inside, hidden, protected by their own geometry. Once the acid has loosened that fold and let the chain unwind, those hidden bonds come out into the open. Paul can find them now. He could not before. So the acid does not just wake Paul. It makes the work visible. It reveals the sites that were always there, but buried. Paul knows this. There is something almost patient about the way he works. He does not rush. He does not need to. The stomach is not asking for speed. It is asking for thoroughness. Slow and steady through the chain, finding one bond, cutting, moving to the next. The fragments drift away as they form, floating in the liquid of the stomach. Shorter now, more manageable. More ready for what comes next. And while Paul works, the acid is still doing its part. Still unfolding whatever arrives. Still waking whatever pepsinogen has not yet been converted. The stomach does not switch from one mode to another. It holds all of its modes at once, unfolding, activating, cutting, like a room in which several quiet tasks are happening side by side, each one contributing to the same unhurried outcome. That is the detail that tends to get lost. When people think about digestion, they imagine stages. First this, then that. A tidy sequence. But inside the stomach, the acid and Paul and the protein are all sharing the same moment. The unfolding and the cutting are happening at the same time, and that is not a coincidence. It is the design. The acid loosens the folds. Paul cuts the loosened sections. The newly exposed sections are loosened further. Paul cuts again. A loop, not a line. Slow, warm, continuous. 4 walls of muscle holding, still around the work. A thin coat of mucus keeping the walls safe. Gastrin sending its quiet word to the acid-making cells. Keep going, there is still protein here. And Paul moving through the fragments, unhurried, finding his spots. It is not glamorous work. Most of the body's best work is not. Somewhere nearby, the shoulders have settled. The breath has slowed a little. The chest rises and falls with no particular intention. The stomach holds its steady warmth. Paul does not need a witness. He has never needed one. The work is enough reason for the work. That has always been true in every stomach, across every meal, in every quiet hour since the first. It was not about making things fast. It was about making things ready. Let your chest rise and let it fall. Slow and unhurried, like water moving over smooth stone. There is no effort in it anywhere. Paul cuts. That is his work, but here is what is easy to miss. The cutting is not random, and the fragments it produces are not the end of anything. They are a beginning. Think of a long protein the way you might think of a rope, with knots tied all along it at irregular intervals. Not every knot is the same. Some are tight, some are loose. Some are buried deep in the middle of a coil where nothing can reach them. Paul does not cut the rope everywhere. He cuts only at certain knots, the ones near large, ring-shaped amino acids, the ones that the acid has helped pull out into the open. He finds those spots, and he makes his cut, and then the rope is shorter. 2 pieces now, where there was 1, and then he keeps going. Each fragment that Paul produces is called a peptide, a shorter chain of amino acids still linked together, still not yet small enough to be used. A peptide is a promise. It is the protein on its way to becoming something the body can actually work with, but it is not there yet. Paul is not trying to reach that finish line. His job is to get the chains short enough to leave the stomach and travel on, and that is all. There is a particular modesty in that. He does not complete the work. He advances it. The stomach is not a finishing room. It is a preparation room. Paul knows this. And so while the peptides accumulate, shorter chains piling up in the strongly acidic fluid of the stomach, Paul is already looking for the next uncut bond. The acid is still unwinding new folds. The gastrin signals are still telling the acid-making cells to keep going. The mucus layer on the stomach wall is still holding its quiet position between the tissue and the acid, unchanged, patient. Everything that needs to happen is happening, and none of it is asking for attention. Here is a thing worth sitting with. The protein that arrived in the stomach came from something that was once alive. A piece of meat, an egg, a bean. That living thing had its own proteins, folded for its own purposes, built to do its own work inside its own cells. Now those proteins are here in a different body, being unmade, not destroyed. Unmade, taken apart carefully, all the way down to the smallest pieces, so they can be remade into something entirely new. The amino acids that Paul is working toward, the very small building blocks that the gut will eventually release into the blood, are nearly identical no matter what food they came from. An amino acid from a piece of grilled chicken and an amino acid from a bowl of lentils are, at the level that matters to the body, essentially the same thing. The body does not care about the source once the pieces are small enough. It only cares about having the pieces. This is the quiet brilliance of what Paul does. He is the first serious step in a long process of erasure. Not erasure of the food itself, but erasure of its original identity. A chicken protein stops being a chicken protein somewhere in the stomach. It becomes a peptide. Then, further down, it will become an amino acid. And then it will become you. That transformation begins here, in the dark, while your breathing has slowed and the room around you has gone still. Paul does not rush the transformation. Rushing is not available to him. He moves at the speed of chemistry, which is to say, he moves at the speed the conditions allow. When the acid is strong and the proteins are well unfolded and the temperature is just right, the cutting happens steadily. When conditions shift even slightly, the rate adjusts. He does not override the conditions. He works within them. There is something almost restful about that. A worker who does not fight the environment but reads it and responds and continues. The fragments grow shorter. That is the direction of the work, always. Long chains become medium chains become short chains. Short chains leave the stomach and move on to the next station, where other workers will take them apart the rest of the way. Paul does not follow them. His stage is the stomach. He hands the work forward and stays. The stomach knows its own boundary and does not try to cross it. The pyloric sphincter, a muscular ring at the far end of the stomach, a kind of gatekeeper valve, opens when the stomach decides a portion of its contents is ready to pass. Not all at once. In small, measured amounts, the stomach monitors what it is sending. It tests the acidity of what it is releasing. It slows or quickens the release, depending on what the next section can handle. Even leaving is controlled. Even the exit is deliberate. Paul knows this, in the way that any worker knows the rhythm of the place they have always worked. The stomach is not a vessel that fills and empties. It is a system that fills and processes and releases in measured portions, always checking, always adjusting, never simply pouring itself out and calling the job done. It did not make the work simpler. It made it reliable. Let the back settle into the mattress. Let it take your weight completely. It has been waiting all day to do that. Reliable is the right word for it. The stomach does not improvise. It does not guess. It builds a set of conditions and holds them, and then it lets those conditions do the work. That steadiness is easy to overlook, the way you overlook the hum of a furnace when the house is warm. You notice the warmth. You do not think about what maintains it. But here is something worth knowing. Not all proteins are the same kind of puzzle. A piece of chicken and a soft-boiled egg and a handful of cooked beans, they all carry protein, yes. They are all, in some broad sense, the same kind of raw material. But they arrive in the stomach folded in very different ways, different shapes, different densities, different textures at the molecular level, if you could reach in and feel them. And each one asks something slightly different of Paul. Think of it this way. Some proteins arrive, already partly loosened by heat. Cooking is, in its own modest fashion, a form of preparation. Warmth unfolds some of the tighter folds before the food ever reaches the stomach. A well-cooked egg white has already had some of its structure softened. The stomach's acid still matters, still finishes the unfolding, still wakes Paul. But the starting point is gentler. Other proteins arrive more tightly wound. Dense proteins, the kind woven into muscle fibers, meat, in the plain sense of the word, hold their structure more stubbornly. The acid works a little longer on them. Paul waits in his patient way for the surface to open up. And then there are proteins bound up inside plant cells. The wall of a plant cell is its own kind of barrier, and cooking softens that wall too, which is part of why cooked beans give up their protein more readily than raw ones would. The stomach did not design this arrangement. It simply works with whatever arrives. Paul knows this. He does not choose his work. He does not sort the incoming material by type and proceed in an orderly queue. He is, in the end, an enzyme, a biological tool that responds to conditions rather than directing them. What he cuts is what the acid has unfolded. What the acid unfolds is what the meal provided. The whole system is reactive in the truest sense of the word. It waits for input and then responds continuously until the input is gone. But here is the part that rewards a second look. Paul's cuts are not random, even though his inputs vary. His active site, the small, specific groove in his molecular shape where the cutting actually happens, still selects for the same kind of bond every time. Large, ring-shaped amino acids, the ones with a particular architecture. He finds them in chicken and in eggs and in beans alike, because those amino acids are common across nearly all proteins an animal is likely to eat. The variety on the surface does not change the specificity underneath. This is an elegant arrangement, though elegance is perhaps too grand a word for something so quiet and internal. It is more like a good design decision. The tool does not need to know what it is cutting in the broad sense. It only needs to recognize the particular shape it is looking for, and that shape appears reliably, regardless of where the protein came from. So the stomach's acid softens the outer complexity, the different densities, the different folding patterns, the different origins, and underneath, Paul's specificity handles the rest. One layer of variability managed by chemistry. One layer of variability managed by geometry. Together, they cover the range of what a meal might bring. The stomach itself notices the difference in its own way. A meal rich in dense animal proteins tends to sit longer in the stomach than a lighter meal might. Not because something has gone wrong, because the work genuinely takes more time. The signals that govern how quickly the pyloric sphincter, that small, muscled gate at the stomach's lower end, releases portions into the gut, those signals are sensitive to how much protein remains. While protein fragments persist in large amounts, the gate opens cautiously and releases only what the gut downstream can handle. It is a measure of workload, not of difficulty. The stomach is not laboring. It is pacing. And through all of this, through the variation in protein type, through the longer sits and the shorter ones, through the lean strips of one meal and the softer curves of another, Paul continues his steady, specific work. Finding the bonds, making the cuts, releasing the shorter fragments to travel onward. He does not speed up when the work is light. He does not slow when it is heavy. He works at the pace the conditions allow and the conditions are maintained, and the maintenance is what the stomach does best. There is something almost restful in that, if you let yourself see it. A system that does not need encouragement, that does not perform better when watched, that does its most essential work in the dark, in the hours when no one is paying any attention to it at all. It did not make the work faster, it made it complete. Let the eye stay closed. Let the face go soft. There is nothing left to look at and nothing left to decide. There is something worth sitting with for a moment. The stomach holds an acid strong enough to break apart the architecture of a protein. It does this continuously for as long as a meal demands. And yet the stomach itself, the walls, the lining, the whole soft interior of the place remains intact. Night after night, meal after meal. The stomach works inside its own acid and comes to no harm. That is not an accident. It is one of the quieter arrangements in the body. The lining of the stomach is coated in a layer of mucus. Not a dramatic shield, not armor. Just a thick, gel-like blanket laid down steadily by cells whose entire purpose is exactly that: making the blanket, renewing it, keeping it even. The mucus cells sit right alongside the acid-making cells and the pepsinogen-making cells, all of them packed into the same folded terrain of the stomach wall, each doing a different piece of the same job. The mucus is not there to stop the acid from working. The acid still fills the stomach. It still unfolds the proteins from the meal. It still keeps Paul's active site open and ready. The mucus does not neutralize the environment. It simply keeps that environment where it belongs, in the open space of the stomach, facing the meal, not seeping into the wall itself. Think of it this way. A candle can sit safely on a wooden table if there is a proper holder between them. The flame does not stop being a flame. The wood does not stop being wood. The holder is just the arrangement that lets both of them coexist in the same room without consequence. The mucus layer is that holder. Paul knows this. He works in the acid. He was made for the acid. His molecular shape is built to function in a strongly acidic environment. In fact, it requires that environment to function at all. Most proteins, if you drop them into the same conditions, would come apart or lose their shape entirely. Paul holds his shape. He was designed, so to speak, for exactly this room. And the room was designed to keep its own walls safe while he works in it. There is a word for what happens when a protein loses its shape under unfavorable conditions. It denatures, meaning it unfolds and can no longer do its job. The acid does this deliberately to the proteins arriving in the meal. They arrive folded. The acid opens them. That is the whole point. But the cells of the stomach wall are protected from that same fate by the mucus above them. The blanket keeps the acid facing inward, toward the meal, and away from the living tissue below. The mucus layer is also not static. It is constantly being produced and renewed. The cells that make it do not lay it down once and consider the job finished. They replenish it continuously because the surface of it, the side facing the acid, is gradually worn away throughout a meal. New mucus rises to replace what the acid touches. Old mucus gives way. The surface is always fresh. This renewal happens quietly. There is no signal the body sends that you would ever notice. No sensation, no sound, no pause in the work. While Paul is cutting protein fragments and the acid is sustaining its hold on the environment, the mucus cells are simply doing their part in the background. They have always been doing their part. They will keep doing it long after the last of the meal has moved on. And here is the thing that makes it worth thinking about, even now, as the room grows quieter and the breath slows. The mucus layer is not a response to something going wrong. It is not a repair crew that shows up when the acid gets out of hand. It was present before the meal began. It was present before the acid was called for. The stomach lined itself before it filled itself. The protection was built into the design, not added later as a precaution. That sequence matters, preparation before production. The wall held before the work began. Paul does not think about the mucus layer the way a worker might think about a safety rail, something between him and a consequence. He simply works in the space the stomach made for him, a space that was already complete before he arrived. The acid, the mucus, the folded walls with their different cell types, it was all in place. Paul came to a room that was ready. There is a kind of quiet competence in that. Not efficiency in the hurried sense. Something more like the competence of a well-built house in a mild rain. The house does not strain to stay dry. It is simply made in such a way that rain and interior exist without conflict. The stomach is made in such a way that acid and wall exist without conflict. The mucus is not the interesting part, exactly. But without it, nothing else holds. Paul knows this dark. He knows the walls around him are not incidental. They are part of the same careful arrangement that gave him a shape, gave the acid a purpose, gave the meal a place to be taken apart gently and completely. The work goes on. The walls stay sound. It did not make the stomach impervious. It made it habitable. You are drifting now, slowly and gently, the way a small boat drifts from the shore. No hurry, no direction to hold. Habitable is the right word for it. Not comfortable in the way a warm room is comfortable. Habitable in the way a workshop is habitable, built for the work, shaped around the work, safe enough for the worker to stay. And the workshop does not stand still. This is the part that surprises people when they think about it at all. The stomach is not a passive container. It does not simply hold the meal and let the acid soak in. It moves. It has always been moving. 3 layers of muscle wrap the stomach wall, one running lengthwise, one running around its circumference, one running at an angle, and together they produce a rolling, squeezing motion that has no simple name in ordinary speech. The closest word is churning. The stomach churns, not violently. The word makes it sound rougher than it is. Think of it less like a spin cycle and more like a slow, patient kneading. The kind a baker does without thinking, working dough until it changes under the hands. Steady, purposeful, not in a hurry. This matters enormously for Paul. Here is the thing about cutting a protein chain. You cannot cut what you cannot reach. Paul's active site, the groove in his molecular shape where a peptide bond fits and is broken, can only work on bonds that come into contact with it. He cannot reach inside a dense, folded protein cluster. He can only work the surface. And so if the meal simply sat still, Paul would strip the outer edges and then wait, with an enormous amount of material still locked in the interior, unavailable. The churning solves this without fanfare. As the stomach wall contracts and releases, the meal is constantly folded back on itself. Surfaces that were interior become exterior. Bonds that were buried become exposed. The acid reaches new parts of the protein mass with each contraction, unfolding more, opening more of the structure. And Paul, moving through that shifting environment, finds fresh bonds waiting where there were none a moment before. It is not that the churning speeds Paul up exactly. It is that the churning keeps Paul supplied. It is the difference between a worker standing at a conveyor belt that runs steadily and a worker standing beside a pile that does not move. One of those workers stays busy. The other runs out of work on the surface and then stands there. Paul knows this. He has no opinion about it. He simply works the bonds that present themselves, and the stomach's movement ensures that those bonds keep presenting themselves. The collaboration is not planned in any conscious sense. It is structural. The shape of the stomach, the arrangement of its muscles, the rhythm of their contractions, all of it exists such that Paul is never left idle while material remains. What the stomach produces through this churning is sometimes called chyme. The word simply means the semi-liquid mixture that forms as the meal is broken down, mixed with acid and with mucus and with Paul's own work. It is not a pleasant word, and it does not need to be. It is just the name for what the meal becomes inside this room, not the meal anymore. Not yet the fragments that the gut will absorb. Something in between, a thick, acidic, protein-rich suspension, moving and shifting. The consistency of chyme matters. The pyloric sphincter, that measured gate at the stomach's lower end, the one that releases the contents in small, controlled portions, responds partly to the physical texture of what approaches it. If the stomach has not yet broken the meal down sufficiently, the gate holds. It is waiting for the churning and the acid and Paul's cutting to bring the mixture to the right state. Liquid enough, broken down enough, ready enough. This is another quiet form of quality control. The stomach does not simply push the meal forward, when a certain amount of time has passed. It monitors. The signals are chemical and mechanical both. The stretch of the stomach wall, the acidity of the mixture, the presence of protein fragments that tell the system the work is ongoing. When those signals align, the gate opens a little. When they shift, it adjusts. There is something almost restful about this if you let yourself think about it. The body has arranged things so that the work regulates itself. No single part is in charge. The acid drives the unfolding. The unfolding enables the cutting. The cutting changes the mixture. The mixture signals the gate. The gate controls the pace. And all of it runs on feedback, each step reading what the previous step produced and adjusting accordingly. Paul does not direct this. He is part of it. He is one voice in what is less a chain of command and more a conversation, a slow, chemical back and forth that happens in the dark, in a room about the size of a loosely closed fist, while the rest of the body begins its own long quieting. The muscles of the stomach contract and release. The chyme shifts and folds. Paul finds a bond, cuts it, finds another. Somewhere above, the breathing has slowed. The limbs are heavy on the mattress. The thinking mind has loosened its grip on the day, one thought at a time. The stomach does not notice any of this. It continues the work it began the moment the meal arrived. The churning does not slow because the person is sleeping. The gate does not hurry because the night is moving along. The pace is the meal's pace, not the clock's. It did not make the stomach mechanical. It made it responsive. Let the thoughts go where they want to go. You do not have to follow them. One drifts past, and then another, and then nothing at all. The stomach is not in a hurry. This is worth saying plainly, because the body is often imagined as a machine running at full speed. Valves open. Valves close, contents move on. But the stomach does not work that way. It holds, it measures, it decides. And nowhere is that more visible than in what happens when the meal has been worked long enough. Here is the thing about chyme, that soft, semi-liquid mixture that Paul and the acid and the churning wall have been producing together. It is not the same from one moment to the next. Early in digestion, when the meal first arrives, the chyme is dense with large protein fragments, barely touched. Later, those fragments are shorter. The acid has had more time. Paul has had more passes. The texture of the chyme itself changes as the work proceeds, and the stomach reads that change. There are cells along the stomach's inner wall, tucked among all the others, modest and uncelebrated, whose particular job is to sense what is still present, not in any complicated way. They do not think. They simply respond to what touches them. And when large, unfinished protein fragments press against those cells, the cells release a signal. That signal in plain terms says, "Not yet." The pyloric sphincter, the muscled gate at the stomach's lower end, receives that message and stays closed a little longer. Or rather, it opens only briefly, releasing a small portion of chyme and then tightening again. It is measuring by feel, essentially, a continuous soft negotiation between what is ready and what still needs time. Paul knows this hour. He has been cutting since the meal arrived, and he will still be cutting when the last of the chyme moves through. His work does not finish all at once. It finishes in stages, the way a long piece of wood is slowly worked down, first into planks, then into smaller pieces, then into something the next craftsman can actually use. The shorter the fragments, the less signal is sent, the more the gate opens. It is elegant in the simplest possible sense. The exit responds to the work itself. What nobody tells you is how much patience is built into this system. The stomach is not passive while it waits. The muscles are still moving. The acid is still maintaining its careful environment. Paul is still finding bonds and cutting them. The waiting is not stillness. It is more work, quieter work, the kind that does not announce itself. There is a word for the state of the meal at this point in its journey. The point when it has been mixed and softened and partially broken down, but has not yet moved on. The word is chyme, and it was introduced earlier in this story, but it is worth settling with for a moment. Chyme is not quite liquid and not quite solid. It is somewhere between the two, the consistency, roughly, of a thin porridge, or of something that has given up its original shape entirely. The proteins in it are no longer steaks or egg whites or legume pieces. They are chains, shorter and shorter chains. What Paul produces, ultimately, are fragments called peptides, meaning short sections of a longer protein chain, two or more amino acids still linked together. He does not produce the final, smallest units. That work happens further along, in the small intestine, where other tools take the peptides apart down to their individual pieces. But Paul's cuts are what make those final cuts possible. He opens the door. Others walk through it. And here is one clear thing about how his cuts are made. Paul does not cut randomly. He recognizes particular shapes along the protein chain, specifically the bonds that sit near certain large, ring-carrying amino acids, the ones with a distinctive angular structure. When the chain has been unfolded by the acid and those bonds are exposed, Paul fits himself against them and makes his cut. The same shape, recognized the same way, thousands of times across the working meal. Consistency is not glamorous, but it is what the body needs at 2 in the morning, where no one is supervising and the work still has to be done correctly. The acid all this while has not faded. It is maintained as steadily now as it was at the beginning of the meal, because the signals that called it up, the brain's anticipation, the smell, and the hormone called gastrin that protein itself releases, those signals only quiet down as protein levels fall. While protein remains, the environment holds. This is not waste. The acid is still working, still unfolding whatever has not yet been fully opened, still giving Paul accessible surface to cut. The stomach, in this way, is always doing several things at once. churning and sensing and secreting and cutting and measuring and holding and slowly, carefully releasing. None of these things pause while the others run. They are simultaneous, they are constant, they are in the plainest sense of the word cooperative. It did not make the stomach simple. It made it sufficient. Your hands are open and resting. Your feet are warm. The whole body is settling, one small piece at a time. Sufficient is a word that carries weight in a place like this. Not spectacular, not excessive. Sufficient means the work gets done, the pieces move forward, and nothing is wasted in the effort. The stomach has been building toward that word all evening, and now, as the meal softens and shrinks and the chyme grows steadily more liquid, you can feel the whole room settling into a kind of quiet competence. Paul knows this. He has been cutting for a while now. The chains are shorter. The work is not finished, but it is well along, and the room around him has shifted in a way that is hard to name at first, and then becomes obvious once you notice it. The stomach has stopped rushing, not because Paul is done, but because the stomach has learned through its own listening that the pace is right. And that listening, that is the thing worth pausing on. Here is something most people never think about. The stomach wall is not simply muscle and lining. Running through that wall, woven into its layers like fine thread through fabric, is a network of nerve cells. Not nerves that report to the brain and wait for instructions. These are local nerves, their own small government, contained entirely within the gut wall, capable of sensing, deliberating, and responding without ever sending a message upstairs. This network has a name. It is called the enteric nervous system, meaning the nervous system of the gut. It is sometimes described as a second brain, which is a dramatic way of saying something more modest and more interesting. The stomach can think about what is happening inside it, using its own machinery without waiting for permission. Paul does not know this in the way you know a fact. He simply works, and the room responds. That is what local governance looks like from the inside. What these wall-embedded nerves do, specifically, is sense the chemical and mechanical state of the stomach's contents. They feel the stretch of the stomach wall as the meal fills it. They detect the acidity of the fluid. They notice the size of the protein, fragments drifting past. And from all of that, the feel, the chemistry, the composition, they draw a continuous, quiet picture of how the work is going. When the meal first arrived, large and solid and still mostly intact, the wall nerves registered the stretch and the load and helped coordinate the churning response. Muscle layers tightened and released in sequence. Acid production was sustained. Paul's supply of accessible bonds was kept steady. And now, as the meal has been reduced, not dramatically, not suddenly, but by the patient accumulation of thousands of small cuts, those same nerves register something different. Less resistance, more fluid. Shorter fragments. The stomach wall is less stretched than it was. The acid is encountering less protein to unfold. This is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to modulate, to hold the current rhythm rather than push harder. The stomach does not accelerate toward completion. It simply reads the room and matches what is there. That reading, that local intelligence, is part of why the process is so even. There is no boom and crash, no great surge of effort followed by collapse. The enteric nerves keep the whole operation in a kind of dynamic equilibrium, not static, not frozen, but balanced against itself, the way a good fire stays at a steady burn rather than flaring and gutting. Paul appreciates this, in whatever way a protein-cutting enzyme can appreciate anything. The conditions he needs, a strongly acidic environment, unfolded protein chains, enough fluid to move through, remain consistent because the wall around him is continuously measuring and adjusting. He does not have to wait for long pauses between opportunities. The opportunities come at a reliable pace. There is something almost restful in that description. A room that monitors itself. A system that does not need a central command issuing orders every few seconds. The enteric network handles the local decisions, the pacing of muscle contractions, the fine adjustments to how the pyloric gate holds, while the larger signals from the brain and from hormones like gastrin handle the broader picture. Two scales of management, operating simultaneously, each appropriate to its scope. It is worth sitting with that for a moment. The body running a meal through the stomach is not one process. It is dozens of overlapping processes, chemical, mechanical, neural, hormonal, each aware of the others, each adjusting in response to the others. And yet none of it requires conscious attention. None of it asks anything of the person lying still in the dark. You are right now entirely absent from this work. Your awareness has drawn back from it, the way attention drifts from a familiar sound. The stomach proceeds without you, as it has always proceeded without you, guided by a system old enough that it was present long before any of the newer, more talkative parts of the nervous system arrived. Paul knows this hour, the hour when the meal is neither new nor finished, when the room has found its pace and holds it without strain. It is neither the beginning nor the end of anything. It is simply the steady middle of a long, careful work. The wall listens. The pace holds. It did not make the work elegant. It made it reliable. Let the jaw unclench. Let the space between the eyebrows go smooth. Small places hold the day longest. Reliable, in the stomach's language, means something very specific. It does not mean fast. It does not mean smooth or clean or quiet. It means the work gets done consistently in the dark, without supervision, whether the meal was a handful of almonds or a plate of something elaborate. The outcome is the same shape, more or less, every time. And here is a side of that reliability that rarely gets its moment. At some point during digestion, Paul's cutting begins to wind down. Not because something goes wrong, because something goes right. The stomach knows when it is close to finished. not in the way a person knows, not a thought, not a feeling, a chemical knowing. A reading of the room. And what the room is telling the stomach by this point in the night is that the protein load has thinned. The long, tightly folded chains that arrived with the meal are mostly gone now, cut shorter, and shorter still, passed along in careful portions through the pyloric sphincter. What remains is the tail end of the work. Smaller fragments, fewer accessible bonds, Paul still moving through the chyme, finding less to cut. The stomach registers this the way a thermostat registers temperature. Not dramatically, just accurately. The signal is a quieting of the hormone called gastrin, the same hormone that told the acid-producing cells to keep working while protein remained. Gastrin is a messenger, and like all messengers, its job is not just to carry news of demand, but also to carry news of its own absence. When the protein load drops below a certain threshold, the cells that were sending gastrin slow their signaling. Quietly, incrementally, the way a conversation fades when there is less left to say. Less gastrin means the acid-producing cells ease their output. The room does not become less acidic all at once. The change is gradual, like light shifting in a room where no one has touched the switch. The acid that is already present stays present for a while. Paul continues working because the conditions still support him. But the resupply is slowing. This is not a flaw in the system. It is the system conserving itself. Making acid is work, real cellular work. The cells that produce it are spending energy to do so, moving charged particles against a gradient, which is roughly like pushing water uphill continuously for the duration of a meal. When the meal no longer requires that effort at full strength, the cells ease off. Not because they are tired, because the signal that requested their effort has quieted. Paul knows this. He does not need to be told that the work is tapering. He simply cuts fewer bonds per moment than he did an hour ago, because fewer bonds are available. His tool is still open. His active site still works, but the accessible surfaces have thinned. The way late-night traffic thins, not because the road has changed, but because there are fewer cars on it. The stomach, meanwhile, is doing something it does very well in this later phase. It is consolidating. The churning that was vigorous earlier, the three-layered muscular wall grinding and folding the meal into chyme, settles into a slower rhythm. Not stopped, steady and quieter. The chyme that remains is thinner than it was at the start. More liquid, more thoroughly worked. The pyloric sphincter continues its readings, continues its small, measured releases, but the portions it sends onward now are the last of the evening's protein, not the bulk of it. There is something almost restful about this phase, from the stomach's perspective. The heaviest signaling is behind it. Gastrin is quieting. The enteric nervous system, that embedded network of nerve cells in the stomach wall, is still listening, still coordinating, but with less to manage. The muscle wall continues its slow rhythm, out of habit as much as need. A kind of coasting, and here is the part worth sitting with for a moment. The stomach does not wait for a signal to begin this winding down. It reads the meal as it works. It is adjusting continuously, not in anticipation, not in response to a clock, but in direct correspondence with what is actually happening inside it. The gastrin quiets because the protein load thins. The acid eases because the gastrin quiets. Paul cuts less because the acid has eased and fewer surfaces remain. Every step follows from the one before it, in a chain of causes that loops back on itself rather than running in a line. It is, if you think about it, an argument that completes itself. The stomach does not need to be told the meal is ending. The meal's own diminishment makes the argument. The stomach simply agrees. Paul, for his part, does not mark the moment. He is not the kind of worker who pauses to take stock. He cuts what is available. He will cut until there is nothing left to cut, and then he will simply find no more. The active site stays open. The conditions only need to hold long enough. And they hold. They always hold long enough. The muscles ease, the signals quiet, the acid-producing cells slow their long effort. The chyme moves on. It did not make the ending dramatic, it made it true. There is no next thing. Nothing waiting on the other side of this moment. Just the weight of the blanket and the slow, easy breath. It did not make the ending dramatic. It made it true. And now the stomach grows quiet. Not empty, not sudden. Just quieter, the way a room settles after everyone has found their place. The work is nearly done. Paul knows this. The acid is still there, softer now, less called upon. The cells that made it through the meal are easing back, not because something told them to stop, but because the meal itself is mostly answered. There is less protein to unfold. There are fewer long chains waiting to be cut. The signals that asked for more acid have grown faint, the way a question fades when the answer is already in hand. Paul moves more slowly now. Not tired, exactly. More like a worker at the end of a long, honest shift, steady still, but no longer pressed. He finds a bond here, another one there. The cuts come farther apart, the fragments are short now. They have been short for a while. The stomach wall, that three-layered muscle, has slowed its churning. The folds and rolls and gentle tumbling that kept the meal moving. That kept new surfaces turning toward Paul. Those movements have eased. There is not much left to turn. The mucus is still there, quiet, doing its steady, unremarked work. It was there before the meal began. It will be there long after this particular night is over. That is just what it does. The pyloric gate is open more often now than it is closed. The fragments have earned their passage. The chyme that moves through is thin and well-worked, and the gate reads it and agrees. Smaller and smaller still. That is what Amy said, up in the mouth, at the very beginning of all this. She was not wrong. She just got the first part of the sentence. The rest of it happened down here, in the dark, in the acid, with Paul. Smaller and smaller still, until the pieces are small enough to be useful. That is the whole story, really. A protein arrives folded and whole and full of possibility. Acid opens it, Paul cuts it. The stomach paces the work, senses the progress, measures what remains. And when the measure comes back small enough, it lets go. Simple when you say it like that. But nothing about it is careless. Every step follows from the last. Every signal earns its answer. The acid does not recede until the protein says so. The gate does not open until the fragments say so. Paul does not stop until the bonds say so. The stomach has no clock on the wall. It has no fixed schedule. It only knows what is in the room. And right now, what is in the room is nearly finished. The body is elsewhere busy. The breath has settled, long and slow. The muscles that held the day have let it go. The weight of the limbs has found the mattress, and the mattress has held it without complaint. And here in the stomach, in the quiet, Paul is finishing what the evening started. Not rushing, not lingering. Just doing what he does, the way he has always done it, one bond at a time, in the steady, acid-lit dark. The fragments that left the stomach are already deeper in the gut now, on their way to becoming something else. Something smaller still, amino acids eventually. The raw material the body will use while you sleep, for muscle kept and messenger made and tissue quietly tended. But that work belongs to other rooms. Paul does not follow them there. His work ends here at the gate when the piece is small enough to pass. He is patient about that. He has always been patient about that. The stomach settles. The muscles ease. The acid holds its ground gently, barely asked to work now, simply present. A long meal. A good one. And the body took it seriously. The way the body always takes its work seriously, without fanfare, without complaint, without needing to be watched. Paul knows this dark. He has worked it many times before. He will work it many times again, each time the same quiet chemistry. each time the same measured, unhurried answer to the question the meal asked. The stomach is nearly still now. Nearly. The room is dark, and the dark is kind. Sleep is not something you reach for. It comes and finds you. The stomach is nearly still now. Nearly. And that nearness is its own kind of completeness. Not finished, not quite, but close enough that the whole chamber has begun to breathe differently. Slower, softer. The way a room settles after the last guest has gone, and only one lamp is still on. Pepsin Paul is still there. He is always the last one working, not because anyone asked him to stay, but because that is simply what he does. He works until the work is done. And right now, the work is almost done. The protein that arrived folded and dense and full of possibilities, it has been opened, pulled apart at the seams, gently, bond by bond. The long chains have become shorter chains. The shorter chains have moved on. What remains is a quieter version of what arrived. Paul knows this. He has known it for a while now. The bonds are fewer. The surfaces have given up what they had. The acid around him is softer than it was at the height of the meal, still present, still purposeful, but no longer producing at full measure. The stomach asked for less, and the cells that make the acid listened. That is the thing about this place. It never needed to be told twice. The mucus lining the walls is still there, quiet and patient as ever. It was there before the meal began. It will be there long after. It does not take credit for anything. It simply holds its ground, keeping the wall safe, keeping the interior free to do what it needs to do. The muscles have slowed their turning. That steady, three-layered rhythm that folded the meal over and over, presenting new surfaces to the acid, giving Paul fresh ground to work. That rhythm has eased. Not stopped. Eased, the way breathing eases when a person moves from waking into the first soft layer of sleep. Which is exactly where you are now. Let the shoulders settle a little more. The weight of the arms is real. Let them be heavy. The pillow is holding everything. There is nothing to hold up. Back in the stomach, Paul moves through the remaining work the way a careful person moves through a familiar room in the dark. No urgency, no searching. Just steady, practiced motion, because the hands know the way. The fragments that remain are short now. Some have already passed through the pyloric gate, handed off to the next part of the journey. The gate opens, and closes with the same quiet authority it has held all night. Reading the chyme, measuring what it finds, releasing what is ready. It never hurried. It never will. And the nerve network woven into the stomach wall, that patient, embedded intelligence that sensed the stretch and the acidity and the size of things all night long, it is sending quieter signals now. Not because it has stopped watching, but because there is less to report. The meal is winding down. The numbers are coming in as expected. Everything is as it should be. Paul knows this dark. He has worked through many of them, each one the same in its bones. Food arrives, the acid wakes him, he cuts, the system measures, the gate releases. And slowly, steadily, the work resolves itself. Not because anyone drove it to a finish, because the chemistry was always going to arrive here. It could not have ended any other way. That is the part worth sitting with. The body did not need to be reminded. It did not need to be rushed or coaxed or convinced. It simply began, and then it continued, and now it is nearly done. The whole long arc of the meal, from the moment it was chewed and swallowed, from the moment Amy passed it cheerfully downward, from the first wash of acid and the first slow opening of Paul's active site, it was always moving toward this. Toward quiet. Let the breath come easily. It is already easy. It was easy before you noticed it. The chest rises, the chest falls, and somewhere below, in the warm dark of the abdomen, a chamber that was busy an hour ago is growing still. Not empty, not cold, just finished with the heaviest part of its work. Paul sets down nothing because he carries nothing. He is the work itself, and the work is nearly through. The last few fragments drift. The acid hums at a lower register. The walls are warm and close and quiet. Nearly still. Almost there. Listen to how quiet it is between the words. That quiet is doing more for you than anything being said. Nearly still. Almost there. And now at last, there is nothing left to rush toward. The meal is done. The acid has done its quiet work. Paul has made his cuts. The fragments that remained, shorter now than they were, lighter ready, have passed through the gate and moved on into the dark corridor of the gut, where other hands will take them apart down to their smallest pieces. Paul does not follow. His work ends here, in the stomach, where it began. He was woken by acid. He worked by acid. And now, as the acid eases and the last signals grow soft, he settles. Not retired, not finished. Just resting, the way a careful worker rests when the shift is done, still present, still capable, simply quiet. The stomach, that deep and muscular room, is nearly empty now. Its walls have stilled. The churning that folded and refolded the meal through the long middle hours of digestion has smoothed into something closer to silence. The muscles are there. The mucus lining holds its place, patient and undisturbed. The acid-making cells rest at low idle. Everything is in its place. This is what the stomach looks like when it has done a good job. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a room after the work is finished, comfortable in the dark. Paul knows this hour. He knows the settling down feeling. The way the signals fade not because something has gone wrong, but because everything has gone right. The meal arrived. The acid rose to meet it. The folded proteins opened. The bonds were cut. The fragments grew shorter and shorter still until the gate was satisfied. Until the body had what it needed. This is the whole story. It needs no other ending. Let your breath be easy now. Let the weight of your body press gently into where you lie. The room is quiet. The night is soft around you. There is nothing left to hold. While you sleep, Pepsin Paul is already at work. Not on a full meal. The stomach has passed its work along. But the acid still holds a quiet presence in that room, a low and steady readiness, the kind that asks nothing and disturbs nothing. And Paul, still shaped by that acid, still open at his active site, rests in his readiness too. The stomach's mucus lining keeps its careful watch through the dark hours. The enteric nerves that run through the stomach wall listen without urgency, sensing stillness and finding it good. The whole stomach is simply there, resting, prepared for morning. You don't have to do anything. Your body knows exactly what to do. It's been doing this work for your entire life, every single night. So let it, trust it. And as you drift deeper now, Pepsin Paul will be here when you wake up. Quieter, calmer, better, sleep well.